Perhaps you want to know if you will go to heaven or you will inherit heaven. And further, you might want to know if by chance you inherit heaven, you will be able to endure it. Both are important. It's not enough that you qualify yourself for heaven and you enter heaven. It's equally important to ascertain if you will be able to endure heaven. If you're interested in these questions, you are most welcome. I have been motivated to consider this question afresh because more and more people are being plagued by these questions. They ask me if they will enter heaven after their death. In spite of the fact that almost every one of them claims that he or she led a good Christian life to the best of their knowledge, somehow in the evening of their life, they are plagued by great uncertainty as to where exactly they will land up after their death. So to such people, what I have to say in this video would be interesting as well as useful. Now, let's be very commonsensical about it. If you want to heaven, if you want to go to heaven, surely you will be interested to find out what kind of a place it is. It cannot be that you want to go to heaven, but you don't want to know anything about heaven. That doesn't make any sense. It's not very smart. So the first thing we have to do is to find out what heaven will be like. Suppose you reach there. What may you expect there? So what I did was, I did a little search on the internet using artificial intelligence. My intelligence is already artificial, but this intelligence is even more artificial. When I say that my intelligence is artificial, I actually mean to say that the education system that's in force makes our intelligence already artificial. A lot of artificiality is inculcated in us by virtue of the education or what purports to be education that's made available to us or what we are subjected to. Well, that's another issue altogether. So I did a search using artificial intelligence to find out what heaven will be like according to the Bible, so that I don't say anything as my own opinion and mislead anyone. Let's go by what the Bible says. And that too, as per the artificial intelligence search and find. Okay, now I'm going to read this text. Fortunately, it is not a very long text, so we can handle it easily. What will heaven be like according to the Bible? That's the title. So once we cultivate an idea as to what heaven will be like or what we may expect to find heaven to be, then we can handle further questions. I think this is the first step to be resolved. Based on biblical descriptions, especially from the book of Revelation, heaven is portrayed as a magnificent and glorious place. Please make a note. Please make a note. Heaven is described as a magnificent and glorious place. Now, surely you know the meaning of magnificent, also the word glorious. Whether something is magnificent or glorious depends entirely on our senses. A building or a place that you find glorious, somebody else may find very boring. So what I want to underline here is that this description that heaven is a magnificent and glorious place is a merely sensual, related to the sense. Sensual, not sexual. Sensual assessment or sensual idea. Please, it's a very important point. Why it is important will become clearer as we proceed. So that's the first thing to note. Paragraph number 2. Based on the Bible, heaven will be a new heaven and earth. Again, this is a phrase from the book of Revelation. Again, a sensuous experience as against this earth and heaven, which now look a little jaded, particularly because of atmospheric pollution. The new heaven and earth characteristic of heaven will be a very magnificent, glorious, pristine phenomenon. So again, it's a sensuous experience. So based on the Bible, heaven will be a new heaven and earth. It is often described as the New Jerusalem, a capital city. So heaven is imagined as a city because there is a prejudice in favor of the city and to the detriment of the rural life. So it's a greater privilege to be in a city as compared to being in the rural belt. It was so then, it is so now, and perhaps it will continue to be so. So heaven is imagined in the book of Revelation towards the end, chapters 21, 22, as the New Jerusalem. So again, a sensuous idea, a holy city. Again, a city. It has to be a city. The history of humankind began not with a city but with a garden, but it will end in the city. So in a sense, the historical journey of humankind will be from a garden to the city. And therefore, in the book of Revelation, heavenly Jerusalem is described as a garden city, which is a hybrid image which brings together, or which telescopes the initial garden, the Garden of Eden, and the Jerusalem, which is a capital city. So it is a composite image of the garden and the city. It's a garden city. Okay, that's paragraph number 2. The city is depicted, this garden city is depicted, this heavenly Jerusalem is depicted with foundations adorned with precious stones, gates of pearl, and streets of pure gold. All of them are purely sensual, or you can say sensuous experiences. 5 senses. Now, paragraph 3. Within this city, there will be no need for a physical temple. It's very interesting. The idea of heaven is that there will be no temple there. Why? Because, if you're honest to ourselves, all these places of worship are pretty boring. They're pretty boring because these are the locations of hypocrisy. And these are places where the most precious aspects of the human being, imagination, intelligence, the delight of discovery, etc., are completely abolished. Merely dull, drab, routinized experiences that keep repeating itself exactly as it has been, say, 500 years ago, 2000 years ago. So therefore, all places of worship really are places of intense boredom, which we dare not say because we fear that this might incur the wrath of God. At least that's what we are told. Therefore, we are all obliged to pretend that places of worship are pretty interesting places, which unfortunately is not true. So, within the city, there will be no temple, sun or moon. There is no need for sun or moon because God's glory and the Lamb will be its light and its temple. So, that's a big change from our condition today. A river of the water of life will flow through the city. Again, a sensuous or sensual experience. And the tree of life will be on either side, bearing fruit and having leaves for healing. So no need for hospitals, therefore no hospital bills, and no need to work hard because plenty of trees, plenty of fruits, all your needs are met. Therefore, you don't have to break your back working. Now let's proceed to paragraph 4. There's only one more paragraph after this, so the text is about to end. Heaven is described as a place without death, mourning, crying, or pain. Again, sensuous experience because the other is positive, namely a magnificent, glorious place with, streets paved with gold, foundations made of precious stones. All these are precious, out and out sensuous experiences. Now, here is something negative. Negatively sensuous, namely absence of pain, absence of suffering, absence of privation, etc. So again, the same thing, which all of us desire in the present world. So heaven is actually imagined in the Bible as a projection of human expectations, whatever human beings are longing for. which many of us are not able to attain, and therefore, as a sort of wish fulfillment, it is projected onto the world to come, so that there is something that we can look forward to. So this is by and large the Bible. And again, the last paragraph. Additionally, let me see. While some descriptions may be symbolic, they convey eternal peace, joy, and fullness of God's presence. Now, there is a problem here. In the last paragraph, it says the most important aspect of heaven or the world to come is the presence of God. Over and above all the sensuous experience, now we are given something purely non-sensual. That's the presence of God. So, what is the foremost characteristic? What is the distinguishing quintessential aspect of heaven? The presence of God. Okay? Now, it's a mixed up thing. First of all, for 95% of the time, the description is purely sensuous. Now, suddenly, in the last minute, a metaphysical thought is introduced, namely, presence of God. Now, obviously, God is not a sensuous or sensual experience. It's a metaphysical experience. So, this is the biblical idea of heaven. According to the internet, you search artificial intelligence, the biblical idea of heaven. There are further descriptions given, but then paucity of time forces me to stop here and then move into our own zones of thought. Now, let's therefore keep two things in mind. On the one hand, there is a projection of this glorious, heightened, extraordinary, magnificent, sensuous experiences, the like of which this world cannot afford, at least not afford to the vast majority of people. And on the other hand, there is also the presence of God. Now, I suppose that on the basis of this information, which is not mine, which is provided by artificial intelligence, which is the only intelligence that all of us trust. We don't any longer trust human intelligence, natural intelligence. Wise people now trust only artificial intelligence. So, the artificial intelligence, AI, tells us that this is more or less the picture of heaven that we can obtain from the Bible. There can be no quarrel with this. Okay. Now, let's think further. With this as the ground, let us now ask ourselves the question whether we really want to go to heaven. Now, on the one hand, what we are expecting to find in heaven is a far superior, incomparably greater sensuous experience, which we, being lesser mortals, are not able to afford in this world. The billionaires of the world may be able to afford this and more, even before they go to the other world. Here itself, they have their paradise. That's not the case with us. So, sensuous experience. Now, if you look at it very sensibly, commonsensically, without any prejudice, what we are expecting in terms of heaven is a continuation of our sensuous life, the life that we live on earth, into the next world, which is the only difference is that in this world, we are limited by the finitude that goes with mortality, limitations of time and space, whereas in the world to come, we are not subject to any such limitation. So, unlimited indulgence in these glorious, magnificent, sensual experiences. That's the idea of heaven. Actually, this idea of heaven, or this part of the description of heaven, is in a great tension with the second part of the description of heaven, which is very brief, namely, the quintessential hallmark of heaven is the presence of God. And as I said already, God is not a sensuous experience. Now, whether or not you are eligible to enter heaven, the heaven that the Bible envisages, can be answered now very simply. If The greatest joy, the greatest desire, the greatest value that you attach to anything at all in this world is all attached to sensuous experiences, which includes also getting more and more material benefits, improvement in the circumstances of life, and a promotion, and all the rest of it. Whatever earthly achievements there are, multiplied, let's say, 1,000,000 times. If that is your experience, then it seems that it makes sense for you to go to heaven, because you have, say, 1% of it here, there you get 100%. So it makes a good bargain. But there is a catch. And that is what we should pay attention to. Whether you will ultimately make it or not depends not on this, but on the second factor, namely, if the real distinguishing feature of heaven is the presence of God and the near proximity, the coexistence of God and humankind, would you find heaven to be a desirable place? I'm afraid not. Why? Because in this world, we're honest to ourselves, we don't find the presence of God all that pleasant. We take the name of God, we invoke God, we try to please God, we at least try to create the impression that we are all, ardent admirers of God and worshippers of God, etc., etc. Not because we are really interested in God. Nobody is really interested in God. But because we believe, we assume that God has profound, great instrumental value. That is, God is a very useful instrument. Instrument in what? Instrument in securing maximum blessings, returns, advantages in this world. Sensuous expectations pertaining to this world. Suppose in the next world, all the sensuous dimension that we have considered so far is wrong. And the significant feature is the presence of God, which doesn't really interest us here upon this earth in our life so far, no matter what you say, which denomination or abomination you belong to. Then there is a real problem. So I would say, in the light of what we have been informed by artificial intelligence, not by intelligence, but artificial intelligence, whether or not you will go to heaven after death can be decided on one thing. That is, do you find being in the presence of God an experience of immense joy? Remember the fruit of the Spirit: love, peace, joy. Do you experience immense happiness, immense joy in the presence of God? Then there is a good chance that you will enter heaven. Do you find the presence of God boring, disappointing, vexatious, a burden, something to be avoided, something to be confined only to Sundays? Then wake up. Your chances of making it there are very, very dim. And even if by chance, suppose Peter commits a mistake and lets you in, or lets me in, if this is a state in which I am, that I am bored by the presence of God, and I see God only as an instrument to fulfill all my earthly sensuous desires, then there, when I reach heaven, the most important thing is that I have to be in the presence of God all the time. I'll be choked to death. You think of the picture in the 5th chapter of the book of Revelation, I think verse 8, where 24 elders and 4 living creatures are continuously adoring the Lamb that is slain, Jesus Christ. Here, mercifully, worship time is limited to 1 hour or an hour and a half on Sunday, only 1 day out of 7, and that too we find extremely difficult to endure. There 24/7, if you have to worship, and not merely for 1 day, 2 days, but for all eternity, would you really like to go there? Think again. Would you really like to go there? And even if by mistake, by chance you entered heaven, how long will you endure there? How long? Please think. So the point here is, and I'm not trying to discourage anyone from wanting to reach heaven. I'm only saying that our desire to enter heaven or our desire to get heaven must be well informed and founded on a sense of reality, namely, that it is foolish and infantile to pretend a kind of ardent desire to attain heaven without knowing anything about what heaven is like. And certainly, being here upon this earth in a state in which one is really not interested in God, except for the instrumental value of God, and the most distinguishing feature of heaven being our having to be in the presence of God all the time in an attitude of worship, will you consider that to be heaven or hell? Based on your disposition here and now, that will give you the answer to the question, will I go to heaven or will I fail to make it? I have nothing more to say on this matter. Thank you very much. All the very best. Goodbye for the present.